welcome to this week's edition of UGASports Live with Jim Donnan. I'm your host, Radi Nabulsi, and of course, Jim Donnan has joined us. He's here to give us his insight and expertise analysis. You can ask him questions, put them in the comment section there, and we will get to them. We also have a ton of questions from UGA Sports, our readers over there. We will get to those first because hey, they are our subscribers. They're the ones who take care of us. If you would, please share this with your friends. We greatly appreciate it. We also have Dayne Young here. We put him last after the share message because, we do stuff by priority. We open the show with Coach, and then I tell you who I am, and then we go to Dayne, fourth or fifth. That's just how it works out. All right, Coach, we'll jump right into it. Georgia did not make the playoffs. They lost to Alabama. I think Georgia got hosed, but maybe that's just the homer in me. My whole take was Alabama didn't need to be undefeated to get in. Georgia did. FSU was undefeated. They didn't get in. And it just feels like it's a shifting goalposts for the different teams out there. I get it. There's only 4. It's the last year of it, but kind of feel like the Dogs got hosed. You're probably much more pragmatic than that. I'm more of a wear my emotions on my sleeve type of guy, but kind of give us your thoughts on where things stand right now and what's next for Georgia heading into this Orange Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, the question I continue to ask myself is if Florida State wasn't that good without their quarterback, why were they ranked this high for 2 weeks prior to the last 2 weeks? Why did you put them up there? And then the other thing is, if we are going to drop 5 places, how can 2 teams that were 7th and the 8th move up 3 and 4 with 1 loss? So, certainly give credit to Alabama. They did a terrific job. They did a great job beating Auburn in that game. That was really a heck of a win for them. I mean, you just so many different things back and forth. But I will say Alabama controlled the line of scrimmage for the most part in critical situations. We had some really good runs and some really good defensive plays. But bottom line, we talk about it in coaching, and you've got to avoid losing first. We made some critical mistakes. Penalty on the field goal, turnover on our end of the field when we didn't execute the reverse. Let 2 guys go wide open on man coverage. That one resulted in a touchdown. And then we had some people in the review booth that let some things go that should have probably been reviewed. But we can talk all day about all those. But give Bama credit. Quarterback made enough plays. But if you'd have told me going into the game that he'd only passed for 199 and rushed for 44, I would have thought we'd have been in good shape, particularly without their number 1 running back. We had some guys hurt. Losing Mims was critical. It messed up our continuity in the offensive line. And Bowers and McConkey played hard, but, they're not the usual self. And, of course, Munden playing on a bad wheel. I mean, he just he's doing all he can, but he's smart enough that he can get by with it in there that those other 2 guys maybe make some mistakes. But kicking game was good except for the missed field goal. And it's just sad because we are one of the best 4 teams. I mean, you look at Texas, almost lost to Houston, who fired their coach. Almost lost to Kansas State in overtime if the guy can kick a field goal from the 10-yard line. But they make the playoff. And you got to give Washington and Michigan credit. I would say this. I don't see how Michigan's ahead of Washington. You look at the offensive teams that Michigan played this year. I think they played 8 teams that are 100 or worse in total offense on the season. Teams like East Carolina, Bowling Green, Michigan State, keep on and on. Iowa, although Iowa did a good job defensively against them. But Washington had a lot more big wins with the wins over Oregon twice and Oregon State. And I think they should have been ranked 1. And Alabama probably got a better draw playing Michigan than they did Washington, in my opinion.
I mean, you saw the reaction from the Michigan players. They were not excited when Alabama came up on the board there.
The thing that went through my mind, and both of you weren't born then probably, but maybe Roddy was, but in 1977 or 78, or maybe it was late 70s, Nebraska finally beat Oklahoma after losing to them every year when Osborne was the coach. they did win in 71 in the game of the century when Bob Devaney retired. But they finally beat OU at Lincoln. And then after the game, the Orange Bowl came in and said, look, this game was such a good game. We're going to have Oklahoma and Nebraska play again in the Orange Bowl. And you would have thought that Tom Osborne looked exactly like Michigan did. Right? We finally beat them. Now we got to play them again in the bowl. And then, of course, OU had Billy Sims back that game and just crushed Nebraska. But you don't get those rematches like we were able to get when we were able to play Alabama a couple years ago. But I still don't see how we could be number one all year and fall to 6. Particularly, how do you fall below Florida State with all the rationale they're talking about, saying that, hey, they were right in there and all that. And I mean, we were way ahead of them, but and
Georgia will be favored over all those teams. I don't get
the other thing that just got me was this guy said, and you said it, he said the coaches on the committee said, one of the things they look at, well, which teams would you not want to play, and how many of them would want to play us? So he didn't bring that out, and the other thing is we dropped 6 places. The 3 teams that lost in the championship games as a group. You look at Louisville, you look at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State lost 45-3 to Central Florida and also lost to South Alabama at home.
And I'm sure it broke your heart.
Yeah, it did. And then and then the other one was Iowa. But all of those teams combined dropped between the 3-4 places. We dropped 5 places as a 1 seed. So
with a 3-point loss.
No rhyme or reason for much of all of this, and they'll say, well, you get a chance to redeem yourself in the bowl game, but I don't even know who else is going to play. I don't know who's going to play for Florida State, but knowing the way Kirby motivates his team, we'll know pretty quickly. He learned in the Sugar Bowl a few years ago, hey, you either in or you're out. Tell us right now what you're going to do, and we'll find out who's going to be playing and who's going to be healthy.
I'm with you there. My whole take was, if you're saying that Georgia is a worse team than Florida State, you're on drugs. I mean, and you're going to put them 6. And here's the thing: even if they put them 5 and Florida State behind them, it would have been it almost would have made it easier for the committee to justify their whole, hey, we don't think this is as good a team as we were before. But to me, they tried to be half pregnant, Coach. They said, we think 1 through 3 are these teams are the most deserving. I mean, we got to put in Washington because they went undefeated in a weaker conference, and we got to play them. But not FSU. FSU went undefeated in a weaker conference, but they don't get in. We think Alabama, Michigan, and Texas are the best teams, but we don't think Georgia's the best team. Oh, well, no, Georgia is the best team, but Washington's more deserving. But I mean, it was just.
How about Louisville? They could have been in the Orange Bowl if they would have tanked that game and said, hey, well, just let them beat us bad as they want to. And then, then everybody would say that all of a sudden Florida State has got this prolific offense. And although I do know that Florida State scored more points in the last games without Travis than maybe Michigan has, or you know what I mean, when you look at all the stuff. But Louisville's now is going to, what are they going to, the Holiday Bowl or something like that? But I will give Florida State credit. They did a good job defensively against Louisville the first time they've been held under 200 yards. So, but Louisville, some of those plays they ran in the red zone looked like they were playing on PlayStation, man. I couldn't believe some of those plays. Block a punt and run some of those Dick Tracy plays. I mean, come on.
I got to keep going back to, and again, I don't want to dwell too much on it, but the fact that you needed a absolute prayer on a 4th and 31 pass to beat a god-awful Auburn team. And you're going to tell me that is one of the best ones out there. And then you play Georgia. Georgia goes undefeated in the regular season, which apparently it's good enough to get Washington in, but not enough to get FSU in. You lose by 3 points with bad officiating. And I'm like, again, not even going to complain about the refs. But if you're going to say that the criteria for leaving FSU out is their quarterback's banged up, okay, well, what about Georgia playing without Amarius Mims, but you're going to get him back by that game. In other words, if you got a guy out who's going to be back and you're looking at a month down the road,
No way they look at that.
I'm just saying Alabama, they're without Jason McClellan. When he comes back, it's like, oh, wow.
They
In other
should
words,
be looking at all that
guys
stuff.
out, then
What
again,
we
guys
need,
coming back.
what we need to happen was Washington to lose and Florida State to lose. Then it would have been us and you'd have, Oregon was like fifth then. Then it would have been we could have got in. We could have got in over those because Oregon didn't have that many big wins. It would have been us, Alabama, Texas, Michigan, and
Hey, Steven, get screwed. I hate these people that like we performed terrible. You lost a game by 3 points. You can just click right out of here.
what did he say? We played terrible.
Georgia doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs because they played terrible. I hate these self-flagellating Georgia fans that just complain. And
we didn't play as good as we could, but at the same time, we made a lot of good plays too, and really we're in position to win the game. But hey, that's easy to be critical. I mean, that's part of life. But
he didn't lift any weights.
Well, the issue with the committee is that they just got into the projection business, which is something I haven't at least seen them blatantly do. Because like you're saying, Roddy, you can say Florida State's quarterback situation is not great, but it's outperformed Michigan's for the last 3 games. And then you can come back and say, well, Michigan's a running team. Well, Florida State averages more yards per rush than Michigan does. So if you're going to give that level of scrutiny to Florida State, it ought to go to Michigan as well. And they're the number 1 team. And I don't think they're one of the best 4 in the country, frankly.
No, that's kind of my point, Dayne, is if you're going to – once you introduce that variable, who's injured, who's not, and you're going to start doing that scrutiny, I think you just open up a can of worms. Luckily, next year it'll be that can of worms is focused on 12, 13. And I've had people saying, we're going to have these same arguments about 12 and 13. We probably will. But you know what? People aren't going to care as much.
12 and 13 won't be as big a deal as 4 and 5. But I will say this.
That's my point.
If you're going to be so much scrutiny for Florida State, then how in the world can you not at least consider the fact that the number 1 team you picked, head coach, was disciplined 6 games for the season?
Yep.
6 times this year, he didn't even coach his team because of quote unquote violations. And it's going to look really bad when all this stuff comes down. And I can guarantee you one thing. If you watch this show, they're going to get Michigan on this sign stealing thing. They got them cold, and they're still going to let them play. I mean, I don't understand it. It's you got more concrete stuff about what can happen to Michigan or has happened to Michigan than you have Florida State that did it on the field without their quarterback but still won. So, but I as much as I feel for that Florida State team, I feel for Georgia. You talk about people that got screwed. I mean, first time number 1 team's been knocked out of the top 4.
To drop to 6 was the worst thing. I mean, even 5 I'd have been livid, but 6 was just like downright disrespectful. It's like, and I don't get into conspiracy theories.
Florida State's not good enough to be in the top 4 without their quarterback. How can they be ahead of Georgia without their quarterback?
That's all I was trying to say right there. It's like, it's crazy. Anyway, move on from that. Coach, we get a lot of questions about the actual game itself, plus looking ahead, some questions about the transfer portals. We got some questions about, certain players and stuff like that. We want to get to those. But right now, first things I want to bring up one of our sponsors here, our friends over at Athens Ford. It is December 5th. We're looking, it's the Christmas time. People are giving gifts. I want to, if you ever want to do that thing where you get somebody a car and you put the giant bow on there and, you get it for them, it's in the driveway. I will tell you, Athens Ford has those giant bows. You can do that. They will set it up. They will deliver it. They'll put it outside and, put the keys in your mailbox or however they do that. You can give it to somebody for a Christmas gift. But what I want folks to look at is that they, if you're going to do it with one of the Broncos. They have a ton of the Ford Broncos out there. Those were so hard to find when they first came out, but now they got the tons of inventory. So right now, I think there are 48 Ford Broncos on the lot out at Athens Ford. Okay, they got the Big Bend, the Bronco Raptor, they got the Outer Banks. just tons of Black Diamond. So any of the packages, any of the customization stuff that you're wanting for on one of those Ford Broncos, they have them. They have great financing deals, great customer service. Of course, they all come with a lifetime powertrain warranty. So if you want to do something, you want to have that big Christmas gift, that kind of fun, memorable thing. I was like, who the heck buys a car and puts it in the driveway? Well, some people do. And Athens Ford, they can take care of that for you. And if you want to really blow somebody's doors off, get them one of the Broncos, of which you can take the doors off. That's actually something you can do. Also, if you're like, hey, I can't afford to do the whole buy somebody a Bronco thing, well, you don't have enough money. You're like me, you can't do that. But what you could do is reach out to Andy Ledecky. He runs a company called My Perfect Franchise. And what they do is if you were looking for to build wealth, to have your own company, your own business, he's got 3,000 different franchises out there that he can walk you through and say, hey, look, how much money do you want to put into it? How much time do you have? What do you want to get out of it? Or whatever you want. He can customize your experience around what you need and what you have. So reach out to Andy Ledecky at My Perfect Franchise. He's taken care of a ton of our customers, a ton of our viewers, and he has gotten them into their own businesses. So check him out when you get the chance.
Coach, I think one interesting thing that's happened is you have this championship play, you have this committee stuff, but at the same time, the rest of the sport is moving forward to roster management for 2024, and Georgia's in that spot immediately after. At the same time, you have the NCAA now pushing what could be a potential new model I saw this morning of top teams being able to pay their players directly. So a ton of changes happening. What are you most focused on for just the shifts of the sport from
I would
the
love to see that new model where, the rich go ahead and do it, and the others, if you can't do it, you can't be in that division. If you're not going to supplement your players through your own money, we've got a lot better chance of using the gate receipts and things like that with our players than we do raising money. I mean, let me just tell you, it's you can say, everybody can say, well, Georgia's Georgia and all, but hey, right now Georgia is not in the upper echelon of NIL money right now. We're working at it. We're doing all we can, but all these other teams were getting their ass beat and getting beaten by Georgia, and they would say, what do we got to do to catch up? So there's a lot of money out there, and here's what you got to really focus on: a player that's a marginal pro player right now that might make the draft or might not can make a lot more money and set himself up for life in college, sticking around and playing. That's why you see all these quarterbacks. Now there's some at the top that are going to go pro, but some of these others more than likely aren't. But they're good enough to help some college team, and they can make some big bucks. Kind of like that girl for Iowa basketball. She didn't want to go in a WNBA draft and make the minimum of $250,000 when she can make $2.5 million at Iowa for another year. So these kids got their own agent. They got people marketing them, and it's out there. I mean, it is a real deal, and you can't just say, well, Georgia will be okay. Let me tell you something. Right now, we got to find some resources here. We got to find some way to get this NIL where we don't lose anybody. We should lose some players because they're not playing. That's for sure. If they want to go, but we should never lose somebody because somebody else, and we want to keep them because somebody else offers some more. I just don't think that should happen at Georgia. Do you guys?
I do not, but it is happening. There are a lot of whispers out there of guys getting crazy deals to leave Georgia, and it happens. I mean, it's Bear Alexander.
Same way it's true about them coming in too. You better be, if you want to get these guys, hey, we need D linemen, hey, if you're gonna get them, you better have it. And y'all, the people that are very loyal to me and our program, and I know I'm old and everything, and I'm not crazy here. I'm just telling you, stunning reality pill right now. We got to get with the program on the money on the NIL. We got to get it. We're looking at corporate money. We're looking at private. We're looking at everything. But we probably need twice as much as what we got right now.
I know you're on the front lines. We cover recruiting. We did the recruiting show last night, and people kept asking us, what about this kid and who's in the transfer portal? And they're like, hey, look, Walter Nolan's in the transfer portal. I'm like, Walter Nolan's going to command serious money. Does Georgia have that? They don't right now. Deion Walker out of Kentucky, that zero technique guy that knows a just absolute monster. Kirby do backflips to sign that guy. If he goes in the portal, he's not in there yet. At least last I looked, he wasn't. But there was rumors that he would go in there. He'd make a fortune. And you're gonna tell me Texas A&M won't pay for him? Texas, Alabama, Tennessee. There are schools that are
Right.
You line them up, and they might go all in on one guy, kind of like Missouri did on Luther Burden. They went all in on one guy. They got him. He had 1,200 yards this year.
William Wananeri, how about him?
Williams won. Yeah, but see, to me, Luther Burden was the test subject. They're like, will this work? They got a bunch of money. It worked. Now they're like, okay, hey, that worked. Let's go get Williams Wannery, and they tried to get the other
Ringo.
Yeah, Rico.
But let me say this. I'm not just crying wolf here. We certainly got funds, but the thing Kirby has to do is we got to maintain our present team. It's hard to bring guys in here making more than what your guys are making,
Right.
and you got to keep morale. We got a monster roster here, so it's a real fine line there. So I'm not going on, but I would say this: anybody in the right mind, if for Georgia to be number one in the nation in recruiting and to only have 2 of the top 10 players in the state of Georgia coming here, what does that tell you about NIL?
Yeah. That's my point again. So
is that a vivid deal or not? And we're the best recruiting staff around, but we're just not paying.
And one of those is not a Georgia native. That's Raiola that came in.
Yeah, we're not paying the in-state guys more than what our players are making, and these other schools out of state wants to pay them that. So,
Coach, let me ask you how this is a hypothetical because we won't know the answer for sure. But Kyle McCord going in the portal from Ohio State, is it more likely that another team has made contact with him to say, hey, if you come to our team, you can get this amount of money, and then he goes back to Ryan Day and says, hey, I'm going to need this to stay here, and then that starts the process? Or is it that Ryan Day says, we're going to spend money to go bring someone in to compete for this?
I think in this case, that's a good question. I think in this case, Kyle McCord had a good year, but not good enough, and Coach Day said, look, you can stay here and compete for the job, but we're going to try to get Cam Ward from Washington State. And if we get him, you can still stay here, and we're going to pay you what we're paying you. But we're going after Cam Ward. Now, maybe I'm wrong in thinking that, but let's watch what happens. Cam Ward is the guy around the country, the number 1 quarterback transfer from Washington State. And from what I hear, he's going to Ohio State. So if you're Kyle McCord, you're thinking, well, they're going to spend this money to bring this guy in. They're not going to bring him in here to do knitting drills. I mean, they're going to pay this guy. So I got enough stuff with my resume that I've won, 11 games as a starter. I can go out and probably get more money and play. So to me, that's the way that looks right now. I would say he talked to coach, and the coach said, look, we're going after Ward. And if we don't get Ward, we're probably going to go after somebody else. So, but you can still stick around and compete, but more than likely, you're not going to be the guy.
I can add to that. People keep saying, well, Georgia needs to get more guys on the defensive line. They need to get this. One of the other things a lot of schools are doing is watching Georgia identify who the talent is, and then they swoop in. Georgia's gone after some guy like Javon Bullard at GMC. This is a kid that, a 3-star, was not as highly recruited as others. Georgia gets him, signs him. And I mean, the guy could have transferred last year. He could go pro this year, but I'm just using him as an example of somebody that's not highly recruited that Georgia brings in, develops, and knows he's going to be really good. Not everybody was after Nye Carr. He was committed to Georgia for a while. He blew up. Georgia identified him early. Georgia identifies him early. He blows up. He's committed to Georgia, and then somebody else comes in and says, look, we got a much better deal here at Miami or FSU or wherever. So I was talking to somebody in the recruiting stratosphere, if you will, that works hand in hand with Georgia, and they said, look, a lot of schools just waiting for Georgia to sit back, identify who they want, and they sweep in with a giant bag full of NIL. And it's like, look, their job's easy. They play golf on the weekends because they just wait for Georgia to pick who the good players are. You can do what set Georgia and Alabama apart was player evaluations. They were great at picking who the right players were. Now you can figure out who they want and just go buy them. So it's cut Kirby's advantage all that hard work he does, other people coming in and taking advantage of it by just paying more. So
Still number one though. Still
Yeah.
number one recruiting. But I think you look at that kid who went to Colorado. We just weren't going to pay him more than the guys in state. I mean, that's
Cam McHale, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player, but
You're 100% right.
it's really not fair for me to sit here and act like I'm some kind of expert on this because I really don't know the ins and out of the financial.
You forgot more than we know.
I'm talking about the financial details of it, but I mean, the reality is for you to give those kind of credos about who the best players are and Georgia identifying them, and in our own state not be able to get even 10% of our own state's best players. I mean, that's got to tell you what's going on with NIL, isn't it?
I mean, you don't have to look back further than the SEC championship to see Caleb Downs, a missile from the secondary. Like Georgia needed a guy that moving forward, and
that blitz he had on the goal line.
And you'll see Justice Haynes begin to emerge there starting next year once the depth chart's a little less full. So
he'll transfer back to Georgia first. See,
potentially, but like the retention piece, what Coach just said about McCord, like a lot of that, not all of it specifically, but it applies to what Vandergrift's doing right now. And then if Carson Beck were to go pro, Georgia's sitting there with zero quarterback experience and likely having to find someone from the portal.
Well, let me say this: do you really think? I mean, and you've got a master's degree now. Congratulations.
Another a week or so.
Well, you got it coming. Do you really think that Brock Vandegrift would have put himself in the portal if Beck was going pro?
Depends on the money, right?
I think he's more interested in playing myself. I mean, the kid's a very competitive kid, but if I'm Brock Vandegrift, whatever anybody offers me, I'd ask for double.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, that's the same thing about any deal. Most people going to come in and lowball you, but I think he's a terrific quarterback. I think I feel like Beck has really shown his mettle too, the way he played. But Beck took advantage of the experience he had in preseason and fall camp and never wavered. There's no way that he could get beat out the way he played. I mean, he had too much going for him. But I'm telling you, Vandegrift can go in and win for you and win big.
I agree.
Unless he goes to someplace like that never has won, like Kentucky, and everybody says Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky to me, it'd be a bad mistake on his part.
He's going to Oregon.
I think he wants to stick around close to home, though. He's a tight-knit family and all. I wish he'd go to FSU. I mean, that'd be perfect for him.
Yeah, there you go.
I guess I look at this, seeing last night in the NFL in the fourth quarter, we had CJ Beathard versus Jake Browning. There's a lack of good quarterback play at the NFL level and in college. So guys like Vandegrift, even if it's just trafficking on hope, but he's super talented, like that market's going to be there, Coach. Like These guys are highly coveted.
Right. I mean, I guarantee Browning's making himself some money right now. The way he played last night, somebody's going to swoop him up. I mean, he's very articulate. He played good at Washington. He's got good size, good delivery. I bet there's just kind of a guy that's been around. I remember his grandfather used to come out. Bobby Beathard was the GM for the Redskins, and then later on the Chargers. And very, very sound, kind of like Gil Brandt and Dick Haley. Gil Brandt and I learned a lot of recruiting and analyzation techniques from Bobby Beathard, his grandfather. I mean, I was thinking about that last night, sitting in the office, listening to Bobby talk about. He used to say, "Coach, when you look at a high school player, how much is he on the ground? If he's on the ground a lot, he's probably not going to be a very good player. And if he is on the ground, can he get up without putting his hands down to push himself up? If he uses his hand to push himself up, he's probably not a good enough athlete." That's a real old memory from the old coach.
No, I love it. Dead on. It holds true today. All right, Dan, I know we got a lot of questions. Why don't you get to them?
Let me pull up the questions here from our members at UGAsports.com. Coach, there's some emotional stuff in here still reeling from the game because the first response was from Herschel34 that said, "Why?" That was the question. Why?
Why did we lose?
Why? That was the question. It didn't even ask the rest of it, but I'm assuming something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
We
you
can move
know,
on to the next one.
enough mistakes that, and they didn't really make a lot of them. You know, they were a heavily penalized team. I do feel like we talked about the fact that how are they going to officiate the secondary, and they let their guys bug us the whole night. They didn't call anything on the. That's the Dick Saban technique. That's the way we play. We hold the guys, but wasn't much call there.
From Red Pants, did you notice bias toward Alabama when you coached at Georgia regarding officiating and scheduling, and do you notice bias now?
I think that's probably just because they've been so. Whoever's winning, they were asking me when I was here what was their bias about Florida. You know, about how good they were doing. So it just goes along with the territory. But I do know that Southeastern Conference offices are in Birmingham, and it's a lot closer to Tuscaloosa than it is a lot of other places.
A lot of questions just about the offense specifically after the first drive. So some of this, I know you said Mims going out, but what do you think about Georgia's offense and its plan, what it was able to do after that first
I think
drive?
two things. Mims being out made us a little bit leery about trust protecting on the edge, and maybe we use maybe keeping some guys in to help. And then the other thing is they went to a 4-down look compared to what they started the game because they, you know, we had them a little bit. You know, Nick doesn't like you put formation into the boundary. He won't even let his team do that in scrimmages. He doesn't like that, and Kirby knows that, and we were doing that, and it was working. But they adjusted to it, and the other thing is, you know, I think the game was a little tight there in the second quarter, and we were maybe running the ball a little bit too much on first and second down, and counting on making these third down conversions, and we never made a third and short like we needed to, and it hurt us. So maybe we could have opened up a little bit more on first and second, but we were playing the game like Alabama wasn't going to score much on our defense, and they weren't there, you know, the first quarter and a half. But that drive they made at the end of the half was just really hurt us badly. I mean, and then when we finally get back in the game, they go 75 yards, and we look like we're not even out there.
Yeah, that 75-yard drive, they had first down in the first 3 plays, and they, I think, passed the 50 at that point. It was just quick, but we have, like you said, a lot of questions about what changed because Georgia's first drive looked so brilliant running down there, and then the second drive, and they kind of hammed up there. We've had a lot of people saying they changed the game plan. They, did Kirby handcuffed Bobo, or Bobo got scared, or Kirby was scared. It's every theory out there, and I'm like, you lost Amarius Mims. That does change everything. And Saban himself said, "Look, we were worried about that they could run on us. Then once we then we went to 40. You know, they went nickel with 4-down linemen. They said they could get pressure with 4-down linemen, and their 2 safeties were split. He said he also wasn't worried about 19 and 84. He said, he said they couldn't hurt us. And I'm like, yeah, they were banged up. So to me, it's not. I know we always kind of want to blame the coaches or blame the calls, but at the same time, I'm like, you had 3 NFL guys injured. Well, 4 if you count Smile Mondon, and Dumas Johnson not out there.
Yeah, I want to just take up for Smile. He's played all year with a really bad foot, and most people would have it in a cast. And eventually it'll come out exactly what's wrong with him. I'm not sure, but just the way he played was so gutty, all these guys. But you can every game I've ever won or lost, you go back and play it. I can make calls right now that I should have made but sometimes you worry about your protection so much that you maybe don't be as aggressive in the way you call the routes. And looking back at it, we didn't throw over the middle enough. We didn't throw deep enough. And we probably should have just put the game in Carson's hands and say, hey, we're going to roll with it. Pass it, let him go. But, I mean, they sack him twice or 3 times. But the other thing that people ask me, but why did we spy this guy so much? Let me tell you something. This guy's a human rocket. You see him when he breaks the line of scrimmage. I mean, fortunately his rushing stats are down because we sacked him 4 times. But you can't you can't just let that guy run around. That's how he beat everybody. So we were convinced that he'd have to beat us passing, and he did just enough running to beat us to keep the chains alive. And then somebody's saying that catch to Burton was should have been looked at too. Did he come close to missing that in the end zone?
He dropped one in the end zone. I remember that.
No, I'm talking about the one he had for a touchdown. I mean, when he went down, I didn't look at that. Somebody might look at the replay, but said that should have been analyzed along with the 1-17 call.
I looked down at the
If you're
teams.
the SEC and you're the replay guy, how in the world can you take a check for that game knowing that you didn't replay that play, as big a play as it was? Unreal.
Well, I looked down at the team stats about 2 minutes to go in the second quarter, virtually equal. Georgia and Bama were kind of doing the same thing. They were both being somewhat conservative at that point to try not to give up points at halftime. And it came down to that 3rd and 21 where Milroe finds Niblack for 17 yards. That set up the 4th and 4. They weren't going to punt there. But if that's a 10-yard gain, a little less, no gain, then they're punting. Georgia gets the ball. And they get it after the half. Like, that just changed the complexion of everything. It changed everything.
And the field goal, I mean, you get I think, who was it? Wilson was in motion there, right guard.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a lot but one of the negatives on Carson it was the fact that he did take that sack prior to the field goal. I mean, you got to get rid of the ball there, even if you just throw in the dirt. But he's been so good all year. He still was close enough to kick it from 45. But, I mean, it's a 10-10 game right there.
This question from Mullet Dog, putting compensation aside, but knowing what we know now about the new landscape of college football, would a younger Jim Donnan still have pursued a coaching career in college football?
Absolutely. I would have loved the fact that, to be at a place like here with the resources we have and places like Oklahoma, we might have bent the rules a little bit some places, but I mean, if it's Wild West, knowing the things that we had, I mean, I went to a school one time that had bought a guy a car, and he transferred somewhere, and they were so worried about him paying the making the payments and talking about it and turning them in that he kept on. They kept on making the payments for him, but that's a long time ago. But
I'm not saying I've heard that exact same story, but
let me just say,
I went to a different school.
Most coaches, when you see, like, for me, I mean, I got my family. Most of them are in Oklahoma, but I mean, I just enjoy being around football, and that gives me some juice. You guys know that I really love being around these kids, and I'm not around them that much, but it just gives you something to look forward to. And when you get out of coaching, you look back on it. But I love the recruit. I mean, every place I ever went, I love to go after players, and then I love to train them and develop them too. And then the games themselves, that was the best part.
And I've seen you needle the rivals a little bit. Like, I mean, did you know Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game since 2016?
That it just breaks my heart about Nebraska. But Texas,
I'm trying, Coach.
Texas. I mean, everybody's going to have your teams that you go against and all. But I had a really good respect for Tom Osborne and his staff, and Burrow's dad was a graduate assistant there, and he came up to me after a Nebraska game one time and introduced himself to me. And then 15 years later, I meet him. He's coaching at Ohio U, and his son's getting ready to get recruited by Ohio State. So it's pretty cool.
Ryan C404 says, Coach, what was your go-to meal at the old Champies on Baxter, where y'all did this podcast quite often?
Yeah, I love the fried chicken. I mean, that's just I love, and I still love it out there at when they have it at the
Classic City.
At Classic City Eats out there in Watkinsville. Going out there, do a good job. But I mean, I grew up on fried chicken. I don't know how I'm still alive, but I don't eat as much of it as I used to. But I know
Well,
one thing. Kirby says that it talks to our nutritionists and everything. Hey, we want to eat good and all, but hey, they need some fried chicken once in a while too.
Yeah, you do kind of supplement it with the whole fried catfish plate. You know,
Oh, that was good.
so it's not all chicken.
Everything. Of course, you guys are big on the everything on the menu. I mean,
Hell yeah, man. We're gonna do it. It's hard work doing this show. I gotta get it. You know, it's about 4,000 calories to knock this show out.
Yeah.
Speaking of good calories, I want to mention our friends at Academia Brewing Company. When you get a chance, swing out.
My go-to out there is the brats.
Oh yeah, the brats out there are fantastic. Look, it's a great beer company. They make fantastic beers. They have great food. They have a great place out on Atlanta Highway that you got to check out. They have the beer garden. They have the outside seating. They have the huge indoor area. I mean, tons of seating, great bar, a place to do corporate events. I know a lot of people are going to be having Christmas parties. You can go out to Academia and have your party out there. They're also very involved in the community. If you're watching the podcast, you can see the pictures that they have up. They actually were in the Watkinsville Christmas parade. They're going to be in the Athens Christmas parade here on Thursday. These guys, they have great trucks. They have, the ones they have in their car shows. So again, the folks at Academia are a huge part of the Athens community. They're huge Georgia fans, and they will take great care of you when you get the chance. Also, today is Tuesday. If you want some other great calories, reach out to our friends at Your Pie. Today is Double Points Tuesday. So if you order anything from Your Pie, you're going to get double points on their app. The points add up very quickly to free breadsticks, free pizzas, free gelato, free brownies, free drinks. They have the top sellers. I always recommend getting the Southern Heat. The Lineage is great. I know Coach likes that one. The Great White, my wife loves that one. Anyway, check out any of the 70 plus Your Pie locations. You can get salads, sandwiches, pizzas, of course, and their pastas, custom pasta. Go and say, look, I want this pasta. This is all the stuff I want. And they don't charge you. They don't go, oh, well, every time you add something, we got to charge you more for it. They don't do that BS. So hit up Your Pie when you get the chance.
All right, let's get this question from Mark M. Do you think that refereeing needs to be a full-time job? That would give the opportunity for them to improve their craft. Should that play have been reviewed, in your opinion? Was it a catch?
Yeah, it'd be great if you could do it, but I just don't know. It's just like, why don't they have communications through the helmet now? I mean, you got the money, do it like the NFL, but yeah, I think the play should have been reviewed. And listening to Gene Sarator, it was definitely a very questionable catch.
From OU Herschel Walker says, Coach, I missed having the watch along show. Gary Danielson just doesn't hold a candle to you. Do you know how Branson Robinson is coming along? And do you think that Georgia may go after a proven back like ETN if in the portal to hedge Georgia's bets?
Yeah, I mean, hey, we didn't have to watch long. I was able to go over and watch the game. I enjoyed it in person. That's one of the few times I've been able to do that. But I was hoping I was going to be able to go down on the field after and celebrate a championship, but it didn't happen. But as far as Branson, he's had a tough injury there, and the only way for it to heal is just rest. And he's coming along extreme. They got to be careful about him lifting weights because he doesn't need any upper body help. But he definitely would have been a go-to guy for us this year, particularly with early season with Edwards being hurt and then Milton too. So I would think both these guys coming out like they are, I would think we would look at at least one running back. ETN would be a good one. We'll see what happens, but he's certainly right on there that a guy of his magnitude's out there. You got to look at him. He can help your team win.
Henderson Dog wants more context of why was it such a big difference when Mims goes out of the game?
Well, first of all, he's one of the top 15 players in the country, and he's a natural right tackle and gives up very few sacks. Trust's probably better inside player as a guard where he's got help with the center and all that, and he's given up more sacks, not many, but more as a tackle than he has any place. So that's a big difference there. I mean, a drop off. And you're planning on maybe using some detached formations with your tight end or in a slot or wider. Now all of a sudden to help Mims out a little, I mean, Truss out a little bit, not so much on the blocking, but on alignment. If there's a tight end there, then the tackle has a easier job, speed rush by the end. So if you got two guys here, then that guy's got to go between them. As compared to there's nobody there, then he can get widen and come in a big angle. So to me, just alignment, personnel, it's enough of a difference that it's significant.
Well, I'll say this, folks, when you saw Mims get up limping, I don't think anybody noticed it for the longest time, and you kept talking about it during that Alabama possession. You're like, oh, what about Mims? What about Mims? Looking, you're like, asking, is he in the where is he on the field? And then when he was out, you're like, you acted like Georgia, I won't say had lost the game there, but you emphasized repeatedly how big a deal that was. So you called it from the second drive on that it was things would be different without him in there. So, but we can complain about the refs, we can complain about the committee, but this year, this Georgia team was banged up more than any. I've covered Georgia 30 years. I've never seen a team banged up this much, has lost this many starters or had this many starters as limited as they were. And the fact that some of those guys rolled out there on bum wheels, bum knees, bum hips. Kirby said it at the postgame how much he goes, I love this team. Look at what you've accomplished. We can say that, an undefeated Georgia team that only loses by 3 and it should have been in the playoffs. I'll pound that drum all day. But the fact that they were an undefeated team that only lost by 3 is damned remarkable considering what they went through.
Kind of reminds me of 2013 in some ways. I had a lot of players that have been on that team said we were awesome, but injuries just took them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Poor Preacher coach says if injuries were significantly impacting Brock and Ladd, why not use Delp and Lovett more? Is a 70% Ladd a better option than 100% Lovett?
Well, we're using Lovett a lot as it was, but you got to think we don't know how exactly how limited McConkey was. I mean, I don't know that he was 70, but he definitely was less. But we probably should have targeted more to Lovett in the game and maybe some more deep balls. But that's easy to say right now.
This question: when will Nick Saban retire?
You just got to think that of anybody that had to feel good in the Alabama contingent, it had to be Nick because he's been whipped up here on the last couple of years. I mean, everybody telling him he's over the hill, blah, blah, blah. A week ago, they were within 31 yards of losing to Auburn. And then all of a sudden, he beats Kirby Smart for the first time in 29 games. And it's a real testimony to their team that they've been able to hold on like this. And they played a guy that's going to be a lacrosse player at quarterback against South Florida. Did you see where Buckner's going to transfer back to Notre Dame and play lacrosse? So here's a team playing for a national championship that had a lacrosse player playing quarterback against South Florida as a starter.
Wow. That's mind-boggling. I think we lost Dayne there. He was trying to put up some of the questions real quick, but I want to go back to
Dayne DQing on us here.
Yeah. One of the questions was in the slot was, who do you think sits out the Georgia versus FSU game? Do you have any idea of some guys that might not play in this game because they might be going pro, or I'm assuming the only reason is because they might go pro.
I think we'll know fairly quickly just because of the Sugar Bowl deal where, we ended up back and forth that one year and lost to Texas. And the next time we played, Kirby said, look, you're either in or you're out. If you're not going to play, let us know. And I think he made that edict to our team on Sunday. And we should know this week. I know they're having some recruits in this weekend, maybe some portal people. They're going to have a limited practice one day just to maybe loosen up. They're lifting weights and running and all, but I think they'll have a little practice on Saturday so the recruits can see the players and everything. But we should have a pretty good idea this weekend. But, if you just look at guys that are going to be drafted, Mims, Bullard, Bowers, first round guys like that, it's just hard to know. But I know these guys got a good camaraderie. I read where Milton said, I owe it to my brothers to play.
Yeah.
I would think if anybody would play, would be Bowers. I mean, it's hard for me to believe he wouldn't, just because of who he is and the fact that he would like to go out being healthy. He's going to have 3 or 4 weeks to get ready now. So, you know what kind of kid McConkey is. He hadn't even got to play hardly all year. So he more than likely he would jack up and play pretty good. So
I can see Carson Beck, of course, especially if he's coming back next year. I mean, even if he wasn't, I could still see him playing in this game just to get one more game film under his belt.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you're not going to come back, I don't know. I just don't know what the rationale is when you're not playing for the championship anymore, except you got good morale with your buddies. So
yeah,
it's just a different world. It's a different world out there. I mean, all these guys got these handlers and they got these trainers.
Well, to your point, Brock Bowers, he was having people who were not his agents. He doesn't have one. The agent saying, "Look, hey, sign with me. By the way, don't get the surgery. Just take off the rest of your senior year or your junior year and get ready for the NFL Combine." And we cover the Combine. It's very, very competitive. But you're right. These agents are like, "Hey, don't play in the bowl game. I want you on a flight to Arizona or South Florida to meet with this trainer. We're going to start training right now. They'll train for 4 months." So you're right. It is a whole new world, and especially if it's not the playoffs, I can see they could happen. But you're right. There's some guys who are going to play because they want to, and some guys who are not going to play because they've been advised not to. So, and hey, I won't begrudge any of them either way.
Next question here, Coach. AAD CEO wants to know, why didn't Milton get more carries?
I mean, I don't know the rationale of what – I got tremendous confidence in Coach McGee, and he knows how to move in and out. But certainly toward the end of the year, Milton, particularly short yardage, was more effective. But you can't take anything away from Edwards, the career he had. So it's definitely maybe situationally Milton might have got some more on short yardage for sure.
We'll get to Valdosta 90, but Roddy, I want to make sure we talk about Dead Soxy here because holiday season.
Yeah, and they've got a deal going on right now that they don't normally do. This is specifically for the UGASports folks. A few weeks back they had their Black Friday deal, and then they had their 40% off that they were offering to UGASports fans or UGASports readers, but not anybody else. Right now they have a site-wide 33% off. Use promo code UGASports. The promo code is usually get you 25% off, but promo code UGASports gets you 33% off site-wide. Now, here's the cool thing. If you think about getting someone socks for Christmas, it sounds like an old cliche. It sounds like something you did for your hardworking dad in the 70s, or some god-awful Mother's Day gift or something like that. You're like, don't buy them socks. That's stupid. Buy these socks. Get these socks for people because they are phenomenal. They are comfortable. They are soft. They don't fall down. And they come in packaging that takes one thing. You don't have to get them and go, okay, now I got to find a fancy box to put these in to kind of make them look cooler than they are. You don't have to worry about that. But the way they come, hell, I actually still have one of the first boxes that they sent me because it was black and cool, and I use it for some other stuff. I think I have 8mm videotapes in there, so I use it as a storage box. The boxes are fantastic. The packaging is great. So reach out to Dead Soxy, get some socks for your family. Use promo code UGASports to get 33% off.
Question from Valdosta 90. Coach, what do you see as Georgia's biggest need going into the portal? And since the only answer is defensive line, who are some potential guys that you might like?
Rhetorical. Yeah, I think D-line, I saw where Zion Logue might be able to come back, for his 6th year. if he wanted to because of COVID. But you always need big bodies. You need big strength guys. A guy you hear about that's out there is Walter Noren that we were recruiting at Texas A&M. He's certainly D lineman that you'd look at, and we probably need maybe a receiver in the portal. You could always use all of a sudden we're going to have some young offensive linemen. With these guys leaving, maybe might take one that could be an instant starter if you knew who he was. But and then probably we mentioned the back too.
Poor preacher.
All of a sudden, if Beck goes pro, then you might look at a quarterback too, just because even though you got young quarterbacks coming in, and I think Gunnar Stockton's a good quarterback, but you'd only have one quarterback. Maybe both these two guys will be here for the spring. I don't know.
From Poor Preacher, what do you think about the decision to let the first half in without any real attempt to score? He's rephrasing it. Why not make more than an attempt to score? Down 10, had a timeout, 50 seconds, maybe let a little clock go and take a deep shot. But it just seemed like Georgia just kind of sat on it, is what he says.
Yeah, we knew we were getting the ball first the second half, and we hadn't been I think they're just trying to regroup and get out, thinking about that way we played against Mississippi State down there. I just think he certainly makes good points there. You could go for it, but I always feel like this. If you hadn't done anything in 29 minutes and 10 seconds, what makes you think you're going to do it now? So particularly with the injuries we had with Mims out, protection-wise, worry about the sack, getting hit from behind and giving them the ball. You got the whole halftime to analyze, and we did a good job. Second half, we came out and scored we had 7 the first half, and we ended up with 24. We scored 17 the second half.
That's a very fair assessment there.
From Chris Landino, not just for coach. So, Roddy, we're included too. This is nice. But why are we playing Bama and Tuscaloosa next year when the last regular season matchup was against them in 2020? That was also there. Was the scheduling impacted by the addition of Texas and Oklahoma? So playing back-to-back in Tuscaloosa rather than flipping home and home with them. It's just the whole schedule got flipped on its head, right? That's the answer.
Yeah, who knows? Whatever happened in the past is out the door. Plus, we got the neutral site game, and you got to have so many away games and so many home games. And this is a year we only get, I think, 3 home games, and then it's the way it works with that Florida game being like it is. But definitely going to be a challenging schedule. Open up with Clemson, playing Texas on the road. You're playing 2 of the 4 teams in the playoffs on the road next year, and you're playing possibly the 2 teams playing for the national championship. But that's why you play at Georgia, though. I mean, we will be okay.
From Lump Dog, Coach, thanks for your contributions to UGAsports.com, giving the demands on Kirby with 2 signing days, the transfer portal, NIL. Do you foresee Georgia and Kirby hiring an individual to serve as a salary cap / NIL manager to help the fundraising and handle current players who constantly ask for more money?
I know one thing that's out there in some of these schools. I know Oklahoma has talked to some guys that work up in the NFL on the salary cap, that know how to manage the, because they do have a cap in the NFL, and the same thing's true with your own team. How are you going to, we talked about this on the early part of the show, who's going to make more than the other guy, blah, blah, blah. It's a unique deal, 3rd year in college football. It's got to be something that's considered. We certainly got some people on our staff that are very competent at that, but having somebody full-time managing it, and we do have a collective where the guys work on getting the money and distributing it once they get in, but deciding who gets what, I think most of that goes back to the coaches. So it's definitely a good question and somebody that we could use, that's for sure.
And I saved this final question from UGA Sports for this part of the show because, Coach, I think this is one that's up your alley. Rug Slanger asked this, says, you've always been great at giving fans a realistic assessment of the state of the program, good, bad, or otherwise. What is your message to Georgia fans about the reality of UGA's situation as we move forward after this loss?
That's definitely one that I've got to make sure I be very distinct and not go overboard and be over optimistic or be the prophet of doom. I think two things. One, we're in a good position with our present squad and with the recruits that are coming in, as evidenced by the guys we brought in last recruiting class. There's going to be a lot of guys that can play and play early, and some of them played early last year. And the fact that Beck's back would give you a dominant quarterback too. The other part, which is a little bit as far as being the dominant team, is these other people know what it takes now to catch up with Georgia, Texas, Alabama redirecting their deal with their collective. And they just didn't sit still when Georgia was dominating. So we got to continue to evolve and get, like I said at the first of the show, we're a little bit behind in what we need money wise. So I'm not too concerned about it because I know Georgia people and the corporate will step up. But I would say that going into next year, there's three teams that are national powers in the league: Georgia, Texas, and Alabama. And the other teams are going to probably keep working to catch up. But that's the way I see it.
I agree with you 100%. And folks, if you were one of those out there, and again, I don't have any connection to the Classic City Collective. I mean, we mentioned their Hunker Vodka on one of our shows, but if you think that somebody else is going to step up, if you have a business and you're like, well, I'm sure somebody else has Carson Beck, selling cars for them, or has Cedric Van Brand doing this, or Jermaine, Javon Bullard doing his thing. Don't assume it's somebody else. If you want someone to represent your company and you want to be a Georgia player, don't just assume that somebody else is going to do it, because that's the thing. It's as Coach mentioned when he came on, having spoken to NIL people, they're like, look, we're Georgia, but a lot of people are just sitting back expecting Kirby to do all this on his own. The man's going to need help. So that's what you're looking at now.
This guy right here wants to give us $2 million. No,
there you go. See, that's what we needed, folks. We need somebody to pop in and just call Coach, send him a check, and he'll take care of it. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this week's show. We will be back next Tuesday at noon. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show, because we damn sure enjoy bringing it to you. And we will see you next week.